What's clear to me reading the book is that probably, your first massive success in a long string of massive successes, but the one I think that still feels most near and dear to your heart is Cheers.
Yes.
Because you helped formulate that show, and with Glenn and Les Charles, you helped make that show, and you're there and you're putting the whole thing together, and this is you read your account of it, and it sounds like just the perfect experience all the way through. Cast, writers, the way it was received once it's beloved, it just felt joyous the whole ride.
It was a wonderful experience. I met the boys. I called them the boys, the brothers, on Phyllis. They were story editors, and I was the permanent director the first year. And so I met them then, and then we reconnected on Taxi. They were the producers, and I was the director of Taxi, which was a wonderfully funny show, but it was really hard. It was the first time I used 4 cameras. And I had this cast that was interplanetary. And,
yes, yeah.
Yeah. And so we went through a lot. And at that point, Jim Brooks, who was one of the great comedy minds, and one of the great comedy writers, was also doing a movie. So he wasn't there on certain days. And, there were other producers who had certain ideas, and Jim had certain. So it was the show turned out fine, but it was really difficult. And then we started to talk about doing our own show. We had the same agent who said, you guys should do your own show. And in the book, I talk about, we love Fawlty Towers. And, we thought about a hotel, and then we thought about the bar, and then we thought about a bar in Barstow. And then we thought, we're all sports fans, so we're going to do something in Boston or Philadelphia. We chose Boston. And we formulated these characters, and the original conception of the show, believe it or not, was Sam Malone, the Lothario, working for a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So the boys went off to write the script, and I went on my first honeymoon, and I came back home. The script was on my doorstep. I read it, and I said, you brought radio back to television, because it was so literate, and they had created this character of Diane Chambers. I had nothing to do with it. That was all their work. And it was so smooth, it was scary how the process went. I knew about Teddy because I had auditioned him for Best of the West, and Shelley Long had been out there, and people had been trying to get her. So they both fell in, and they wrote the part for Rhea because they knew Rhea from Taxi, and it just went so smoothly. And we had a deal with NBC. We got to do 2 pilots, and they would have to make 1. And this was the first pilot. And we had big fans at NBC. Grant Tinker was brought in to run it, who brought me out to California. And Brandon Tartikoff, who was my close friend, was there. So it went great. And we debuted like in 70th place. Nobody watched us. There was no reason to watch us, but the rest is history,
Talking about Cheers, you mentioned something in the book that had an impact on me. You guys thought of there used to be a rule in sitcoms, a diehard rule. I'm talking about the 1950s, 60s, that you always have to the episode needs to end where it started. The world can't change. I always use the example of Gilligan's Island. At the end of the episode, they're still on the island. They have to still be on the island, and that was just one of the rules. That was a solid rule of television for a long time, and then it starts to change. And you're part of that change of, no, we don't end up always at the same place where we left off. Things evolve, characters evolve, people come and go. That felt like a huge shift in television. Was that conscious?
Oh, yeah. Well, at the end of the first year, we have that great scene where they kiss, and we knew we were going to get them together the second year. There was no more teasing. We had to get them together because if Sam Malone couldn't bet a woman in a year, what kind of stud is he?
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we were excoriated for that. I still have Howard Rosenberg's review in the LA Times, who said the show is over.
Yeah.
It's lost the magic. But we said we didn't care. We knew we had to be evolving. We knew we had to get them together and break them up, get them together and break them up. And we knew that at the end of every year, the boys would write themselves into a corner.
Mm-hmm.
They'd break them up somehow and then figure out in the summer how to get them back together again or not. And it yielded, when at the end of the second year, when Diane flips out and goes into the loony bin, she, in the first episode of third year, she brings her doctor into Cheers, who has told her, go back and confront your demons. And the doctor was Fraser Crane.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. And, we finally, when Shelley decided she didn't want to do the show anymore, we had to, in essence, break them up and go back to the original conception of the show when we sat around talking about it, which is Sam working for a woman.
Yeah. Kirstie Alley comes in and he has to work for her. And I didn't realize that was the original idea.
Yeah.
But such a good flip and putting them. You didn't try and recreate Shelley Long's role with someone else.
How can you? No, you know who became Diane? Frasier.
Yeah.
Frasier did all the upscale jokes.
Yeah.
And Beebe and Lilith Sternin.
Right.
They did all the upscale humor, so we didn't miss Diane in that way. We missed her. I mean, Shelley, without Shelley Long, that show doesn't get to year 2.
Yeah.
That's how brilliant she was.
Yeah.
She was amazing.
The casting, and this is something else I wanted to talk about. I think people don't often realize how difficult casting is, and you have to catch lightning in a bottle, and you have been around some of the greatest casting of all time, and been part of it. I mean, it's just stunning to me. You cannot, first of all, finding Kelsey Grammer to play Fraser Crane, but then later on when you find David Hyde Pierce to play his brother, when your casting director finds this person, the casting is just insanely good. And you can't imagine, there was no one else who could have played Kelsey Grammer's brother other than David Hyde Pierce. It was just perfect. And I mean, I could go through a list of all the different casting choices, but they're impeccable.
Kelsey owes his career, and I've told him this to John Lithgow. Mm-hmm. Because when the boys wrote Fraser Crane, they went to Lithgow, who would have been great, And John didn't want to do a series then. And so we looked at a lot of people, and then Kelsey's face appeared on a tape from New York City, and we all started laughing. Mm-hmm. He was 28 years old then. And we brought him out, and I think he lived in this car for a little bit until, he got going. But he was amazing. He was a 4-show arc to get Diane back in the bar. But once that first show happened, we knew we had to keep him.
Right.
And then when I didn't create Frasier. Frasier was created by Angel, Casey, and Lee, who came to us and said they wanted to spin Frasier off. And their genius was they took an actor, Kelsey Grammer, and made him Sam Malone, and made David Hyde Pierce Frasier.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's how good an actor Kelsey is, that he can go from kind of a strange dude on Cheers to the center of a show. Yeah. And they could bring David in to play Frasier. So
who's more Frasier than Frasier. No, it's I mean, fascinating how these things work. I had heard this, but I loved reading that when you guys were putting Cheers together, John Ratzenberger came in and read for the part of Norm, didn't have a great audition, and he's walking out thinking, and you guys are thinking, well, we won't ever see him again, and he turns around and says,
"Do you have a blowhard in the bar?" And we said no.
Yeah.
So
And he explained, right?
yeah, he went into the whole thing, and we said, wow. So we hired Ratzenberger for the pilot. He's in the pilot because he talks about the sweatiest movie ever made. That whole repartee.
Yeah.
Which when we were in the office talking about the show, we heard somebody at the Paramount commissary talking to his friend about what's the sweatiest movie ever made. So we stole that. And because we had done a lot of research in bars about bar conversation, everything like that. So Rats did that. So Rats was hired for the pilot. He was not hired for the second show, but we realized that we missed him. So he's the only permanent member of the cast that's missing one show.
Yeah.
He only did 274 out of 275.
But amazing that he in the audition, I mean, anyone listening right now is going to think that's what I have to do, is turn to them and say, do you have a goalkeeper in your show? What? Do you have a lion tamer? But he knew, it was a brilliant idea and just such a great tool for the writers, a know-it-all. A guy who knows everything or thinks he knows everything is just a gift to the writing room.
I know, it was, and to give him credibility, the great trick that we did was Sam would listen to him, and Coach would listen to him. Coach with wide eyes, Nicky would listen to him and give him credibility.
Right.
And especially Teddy. If Teddy listened to you as Sam, the bartender, then you had credibility. So that was the great thing about that show.